What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here, JaboctheGreat once again. You already know who it is. We're back once again with another episode of the Last Word Podcast. And it's time to talk about the first four games of Super Wild Card weekend. We got two this afternoon, but we're going to stick with those that we already had happen. Starting with the Packers, as you can see by the title of the video, demolished the Cowboys 48-32. Now, honestly, that if you watched any of this game, final score, it should be a lot worse. There was a point in the game, I think, with about 10 minutes exactly left. When they scored that last touchdown, they were down 48-16. The Cowboys were to the Packers. This game was never even close. Like, it was never in doubt. I mean, this might be, without a shadow of a doubt, the most embarrassing playoff loss that I may have ever seen.
Yeah, this was rough, and especially to be in an organization like the Cowboys, who are they had a lot riding on the season. They're 8-0 at home. They come in 12-5. They've had a dominant season. It looks like they can finally put all the playoff kind of agendas to rest, and that does not happen. 27-7 at halftime. Pick sixes from Dak. Just get ran over by Aaron Jones. The Cowboys could not stop anything. They could not do anything. Their offense looked really, really bad. The final score makes it look like it was somewhat of a shootout. It was not. It was Packers were in control the whole time. Jordan Love came in and went to work. 3 touchdowns for him. 3 touchdowns for Aaron Jones. The two of them put in a lot of work to put the Cowboys to rest here, which means that they will guarantee be moving forward to face the San Francisco 49ers. The Cowboys have squandered a pretty favorable path in this year's playoffs. We were just talking about that off the recording. If they win this one, they get another home game, and they'll probably have to go face San Fran and San Francisco. But all in all, that would have been a decently favorable run. Instead, they get just destroyed, and it's not much to say other than they couldn't get their offense going, and the Packers were rolling. The Cowboys defense was not there. The Packers marched down the field, touchdown. They punt on the next drive, but then they get a pick. They score a touchdown. Cowboys are forced to punt, and then they get a touchdown. And then right before the half is over, they are able to get a pick six, and then the Cowboys finally score to make it 27-7. So it's 27-7 at halftime, but it's not like it was like 7-7 and the Packers ran away. They were up 27-0 before Dallas found any slight sign of life. And it didn't stop in the second half either. I mean, the Cowboys started scoring finally, right? So they get to 10, then they get to 16. But in that time, the Packers get to 34, then they're at 41, then it's 48, and then they finally slow down, and the Cowboys get to 32. So this was just a dismantling from the time that the game started to the time it ended. And they put up a stat in the game where they said, the Cowboys in the games that they scored first in this year were 10-0, and then in games where the other team scored first, they were 2-5. And apparently, that's just they can't allow the other team to score first. Packers scored first on a pretty easy drive for them, and it was all downhill from the Cowboys from there. They never led. They never thought about leading. They never thought about winning this game. It was done. I think at a certain point, the game plan probably became, how do we make this look the least bad that it can? And yes, exactly a year ago yesterday is when the Jaguars came back from down 27-0 on the Chargers. So it would have been crazy if that happened with the exact same score and similar fashion in the playoffs in the wild card round. But it did not. The Cowboys were not able to get it back together. I think Dak Prescott said after the game, "I suck today." I mean, he wasn't great. 41 for 60. He threw for 400 yards, but he threw 2 picks. One being a pick six. The rushing game wasn't there, which they were down too much to be there. This is just kind of crazy, and I was dead wrong. I said that the Cowboys would be fine in this one, and that they should be able to. This is a good team for them to put their worries about the playoffs to rest. It was not. They got destroyed.
Yeah, Slime couldn't have helped the Cowboys in this one. Look, there's like you said, there's not really much to say about this one. I mean, a lot of these games outside the game we're going to talk about next, the games weren't really much of games. If we're going to be honest here, um, playoffs seems to just have a funny way of just, I don't want to say exposing people, but like when it comes down to it, these are the games that matter the most. And for the Cowboys to put that out on tape, I mean, it tells me something's wrong with that team, with that organization. Because the Packers that have as great of a game as they did offensively But at least, for the Cowboys, like you gotta at least try to come back and match that. Couldn't do it. Dak obviously wasn't good. I mean, you can look at his stats, right? But we were just talking about this. A lot of that was garbage time. It wasn't much really going on for him before that. So like this is the most empty calorie, 400 something yards from a quarterback we might ever see. He threw 60 passes. He threw three times as many passes as Jordan Love in this game. I mean, Jordan Love, I'm not sure if he finished with a perfect passer rating, because they came back in. The starters did the last little bit because the Cowboys were actually like scoring and they're like, okay, let's, put these guys down. But yeah, he might have finished with something close to it if he didn't finish with a perfect passer rating, but he did have one really late in the game. So, you know, funny enough, he had a stat line that was darn near identical to CJ Stroud, who we'll talk about in the next video. Like there were really no flaws for the Packers outside of letting the Cowboys even score. Late in the game, once they went up 48-16. But they took out starters, they weren't playing hard. Like even with 10 minutes left, like they were not going to overcome a 30-point lead. It just wasn't going to happen. So yeah, they really just didn't have any flaws in this game. Aaron Jones, he it seems like every time he plays the Cowboys, obviously, his roots in Texas and everything. Every time he plays them, he just kills them. I can't remember what game it was. It might have been 2021. I'm not sure. I know Aaron was still there, obviously, but um, he had like 3, 4 touchdowns in the game against them. Like Packers overall, Aaron, especially was, but the Packers, it seems like are just Cowboy killers. Um, and both Aaron's are big parts of that. And running game for them was really good. Obviously, with him leading the way for Dallas, it was okay. Like, but it's just nothing really explosive. Not the running game that the Cowboys had for so many years. Um, like again, there's just not much to say. Like, because you never want to not give the team that won the game the rightful credit here. So you don't want to just talk about the Cowboys because I mean the Green Bay Packers made them look so bad. So you have to give them credit. Defensively, they were great. Picked off Dak twice. One of those was a pick six, like you said, and that one, that one that was a pick six could have been a second one because you had the one earlier that wasn't. That was Jair getting a pick there. He could have gotten it in the end zone, but they said he was down. Like there was just nothing that was really going right for him, and that just tells me that again something's wrong with this organization. Like the Dak CD thing, like they were such a. And again, you can look the stats for CD, like 9 for 110, but like first half it was basically non-existent. The connection between them, there was nothing going on. Um, coaching wise, I mean, Dan Quinn didn't do himself any favors here, trying to get another job, because he would have probably been looking for a head coaching job after this. Mike McCarthy
Yeah.
obviously didn't do himself a favor. Dak Prescott, a lot of speculation about whether they'll keep him and McCarthy this morning. We'll see. But I mean, obviously, the offense is a part of it, but let's not let the defense off the hook. I mean, there were points like that touchdown to
No.
Musgrave. I mean, there was literally nobody within like 100 yards of the man. Exaggerating, of course, but there's nothing else you can really say about this one. Like the Cowboys suffered an all time defeat. It is what it is. The Green Bay Packers, they move on.
So from there, we're going to jump into the other NFC game. We had a shootout between Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. This has been a big game that we've been thinking about. As soon as it was decided, we knew that you're going to have Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit. Detroit messed around and tried to do a Matthew Stafford jersey ban. There was a lot of tension in the air on this one. And in the first half, we had a pretty good shootout. In the second half, it becomes a field goal battle. But the Lions take a 1-point victory 24-23 to hold on and get their first playoff win in like 30 years. Jared Goff sends his former team home. A lot of stories in this one. Goff and Stafford both play good games. I mean, this is the best game we've had so far of the playoffs. It's the most competitive one. Both of these teams were alive and until the very end. There's an equal chance throughout the game for either of these teams to win. A lot of the other games, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that one of the teams was not going to be winning. It'd be a little different when we talk about Cleveland and Houston, who started out as a shootout, and that one fell apart pretty quickly. But this one stayed close the whole time and had great games from pretty much everyone that you would think to be involved. Goff played well, Montgomery and Gibbs were able to get on the scoring sheet. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds played great for the Lions. For the Rams, Stafford had it going. He was playing really well. Kyron Williams, of course, was doing good. Puka Nacua had almost a 200-yard game. He was essentially all of the Rams receiving, and that, as great as a game as that is, ultimately is a little bit of the problem with the Rams sometimes, is that they get kind of caught up in these things where it's all going to one guy. And I mean, sure, the Lions only won by 1 point, and they were probably in a scary situation. But at that point, it really becomes like, sure, we can let Puka get anywhere, but as long as we can hold on and keep scoring ourselves and not let the rest of the offense get too involved, then we'll be okay. This one is just a really good game from both these teams. They hold on to the ball well. We got some fumbles going on. Puka did end up fumbling, and then Goff fumbled, but it didn't go to the other team. But ultimately, there's not a lot of turnovers. They just went out there and went at each other, and I guess the the Lions were able to hold it together a little more confidently. And again, I was dead wrong. I said that this was a shootout type of game, that I trust the Rams a little bit more to survive in a shootout situation. That did not happen. The Lions stay alive as the 3 seed and get to move forward. It's cool to see the Lions do this. I did say in our pick video that if the Rams, I picked the Rams, but I would prefer the Lions to win. It's nothing against the Rams. It's hard not to want to root for this Lions team, especially with my team dead in the water from week 2. So it's I'm happy to see Jared Goff and the Lions move forward. They'll have some tough things ahead of them here, but this was also a really tough opponent. Just there's so much on the line here with Stafford being back and Stafford playing against the Lions. I mean, it's weird to call a playoff game a trap game, but this one for the Lions is definitely a trap game to have Stafford coming back into Detroit, playing his only playoff game on Ford Field. That's a scary situation, and the Lions are able to persevere and get out of there. And now they know that they don't have to go face the Cowboys in Detroit either, or in Dallas. So
Yeah, it's funny how that kind of turns out because obviously, that game pretty much cost them the 2 seed, with how things ended in that season. At the end of the season, there with the Cowboys winning the division, getting the 2 seed, and they basically, if they had won the game against the Packers and hadn't done what they done, they would have been hosting the Lions. So, I guess it comes around. They got back. They'll be hosting another playoff game. So, yeah, this one definitely was undoubtedly the best game this weekend. We'll see about tonight, but I'd say I'd wager this was probably the best game for sure. Um, early on, I was like, okay, the Rams, they had their first drive was a really good drive, but they couldn't finish. And that's kind of the issue that they had, later on in the second half. Um, couldn't really finish drives with touchdowns instead of field goals or later on that last drive a punt. Um, but after that first drive for them, I'm like, okay, it was a good drive. They didn't finish. But then when Detroit came back and scored, I'm like, all right, y'all can't keep doing this right here. Like I can already tell you, if the Lions are gonna go down and have these long drives, because that first drive they had 75 yards down the field, really no resistance from the Rams defense. If this is the type of drive that they're gonna have each and every time, like they're gonna lose. Like, and then they came back, even though the Rams did get a touchdown. The next one, Lions scored, and I was like, okay, 21-10, and then boom, just like that, 21-17. It's like, okay, this is turning into, what you said, a shootout. Flip that in the second half, it's just the opposite. Lions only got a field goal in their first drive and then nothing else. And again, the Rams, they had multiple drives where they were in Detroit. They finished in Detroit territory, but only with field goals. And then the last drive, they started from their 8-yard line. Controversial here. Third down and 14 after they had a holding penalty on that first play. So think about this holding penalty. You're at the 34, you back up to the 44, and then you have that pass, the holding pass interference, whatever you want to call it there, on Puka Nacua. Probably should have been called. There was also that play earlier in the game um, where the Lions, they were about to go for it on fourth down, and they said that they jumped, but the Rams got jumped, and I was like, okay, that one was kind of weird. Um, like they called it on the Lions, but it was like very obviously like it was very obviously on the Rams there, but they called that one for some reason. So yeah, it was. the I don't want to say like the rest were weird, but those two calls, I mean, like they did affect the game there, and this one especially at the end, not calling the penalty there, they would have gotten it even further in Detroit territory. Now, clock management being only now one and having such a short field, like maybe they would have just gotten a field goal, maybe they would have been able to score a touchdown and give Detroit a lot more time to go through. But yeah, that was definitely a missed call there. And that, you can make an argument is like, hey, maybe the Rams got, you remember that Saints call is like, okay, maybe things just come around, but we don't know. So I feel like, even without the calls, I feel like this one was just more about how well the Lions played, overall. And the fact that the Rams, again, the drives where they were able to get all the way in Detroit territory, got deep, only finished with field goals because they only lost by 1 point. So, I mean, if they had just gotten a touchdown on one of those drives, or again, if they had scored on this last drive instead of punting, maybe they would have won. But I won't take anything away from the Lions. I mean, this one not wasn't about the running game for sure. Like this was a show by the quarterbacks, 360 yards from Matty Stafford, and then Jared Goff with almost 300. Like this was obviously a show by each passing game there. So yeah, don't want to take anything away from these teams just based off of some calls. But yeah, this was definitely a really good game. Excited to see Detroit advance.